the yard site of Rebbetzin Hayamushkan. And so it's a little bit colder here, so we can, we can commiserate with everybody in New York who's at the conference for the Shluchot. And I myself am a little bit more formal today because my wife told me I had to warm up. I couldn't find a sweater, so that's the way I have a suit on. That's a joke where they say everybody they have a big room full of people, and they say every husband who follows what the wife says to him go to one line, and every husband that can do whatever he wants and doesn't listen to his wife go to the other line. So all the husbands go to one line. There's just one guy on the line for that he makes his own rules. So everybody turns to him and says, what's your secret? How do you do this? How are you able to do whatever you want? Oh, no. My wife told me to come this line, so I came. All right, so let's get started. It's also interesting how the Hayom Yom was written way before the Rebbe's passing, right? In times of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The one for yesterday was about women. The one today is about how there are laws that give life. His name was Chaim Mushka. And the one for tomorrow also has to do with women and wives. So it's all very connected. Okay, so here we go. So we'll learn a little bit about laws that give life. So Perik Beis Daf Yud Amud Beis Mishnah. Misha Afach et Zeitav ve'iro Evel o Ones o shitu poalim tuen Korah Rishona umanicha lechar Moed Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so we're talking about the process of making olive oil. So, and again, this parak is going to be mostly also about Chol HaMoed, and also hinting here already to laws of mourning. And then after this is going to be a lot on the laws of mourning. So, and here we have already a little bit of a hint to that. So somebody's in the middle of the process of making olive oil, and so they would have to press the olives, right? And there would be a process where they would have to flip over the olives, I guess, so they wouldn't ferment too much. Anyway, but once that was done, it was already, time to do the full press, all or nothing. They have a picture here in the Quran. I don't know if I'll be able to show it closely enough. It's like an olive press where you would have on basically a rock over the olives and this big beam that was stuck to a hole in the rock, and then at the end of the beam would be all these other rocks kind of bringing it down, so that torque, that pressure, that leverage would press the olives down. So once those olives had already been flipped over, and the person became an ago, right? Lalena. Or there was some other kind of onus where he wasn't able to finish the job, or it says an onus is just unavoidable accident, or his workers tricked him. Toen Korah Rishona. He was able to press down that first one. I didn't see here mentioned, but when we go to the store, there's this thing called extra virgin olive oil. What is that? What's that so special? That's that first pressing. So that first pressing is the most valuable, the most expensive. And I didn't see that written here exactly, but that seems to be the pshat. So you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do at least that initial pressing. And the rest you do after the moed. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, Rabbi Yosamer zolef v'gomer v'gaf kedako. Says, no, you don't know what? You complete the pressing, you plug the barrel in its usual manner, right? So basically complete the work, and just don't worry. But what's interesting about this Mishnah, it starts out talking about mourning, and then it switches to onus and the workers tricking him. It's still all, and then it ends talking about Chol HaMoed. It seems like very different things. So there are different shatim here on what's going on. Is it solely related to the laws of mourning, this first part, and we have no clear answer? And the second part is relating to Chol HaMoed only, or is there kind of so there some commentators want to say that the person became an avil before the Moed, something like that. But we'll see. The Gemara is going to talk about that a little bit more. So now in the Gemara, Patach be'evel v'siyem b'moed. The Mishnah starting out talking about mourning. Now it ends talking about Chol HaMoed. What's going on? Amar Rav Sheisha b'reid Rav Idi. So Rav Sheisha says in the name of Rav Idi, זאת אומרת דברים המותרים במועד אסורים בימי אבלה. No, it's coming to teach you that whatever is permitted on Chol HaMoed is still asur during the days of mourning. Therefore, if a mourning period befell one before the festival, and he could not prepare properly for the festival due to the prohibition against performance of labor by a mourner, he is permitted to perform labor during the intermediate days of the festival to avoid financial loss. Okay, so again, the actions that are permitted on the days of the festival are permitted during the days of one's mourning. But here, so the opening an exception. What's going to be the main difference here between the laws of mourning and the laws of Chol HaMoed? Chol HaMoed, everybody has to keep Chol HaMoed. When it comes to mourning, it's just this one person who can't do it. So, the Isser Malacha, in many ways, should be maintained, and there should be less leniency. Okay, let's keep going. Rav Ashi Amar, lo mibai kamar. You don't have to say that you're just trying to join these two things. Lo mibai bimei evlo de midarabanan. So it's not necessary to state that during the days of mourning, when the prohibition against labor is rabbinic, is permitted to perform labor, that if delayed could cause serious loss. But even on the intermediate days of the festival, when the prohibition against the performing labor is by Torah law, performing such labor is permitted because in the case of a loss, sage is permitted. So let's say it again. Havashi Amar, lo mibai kamar, lo mibai bimei evlod midirabanan b'shari, ela fila b'moed the isra melacha midoraisa b'mkom pseida sharabanan. So what are you trying to learn? Like, he's saying here something very interesting. He's saying that Chol HaMoed is the oraisa, and the laws of Avelus is midirabanan. Chol HaMoed is the oraisa. Wow. So how come it's the rabbis are saying that it's allowed? We have a malacha on Shabbos. The rabbis can allow it. It's the oraisa. So Chol HaMoed is different, where it's a deoraisa root to the law, but at the same time, the details of how it's applied was given over for the rabbis to decide. I think that's not the common scenario. Usually, it's not like that. We're going to see there's going to be a whole debate. There are different opinions even among the commentaries as to whether Chol HaMoed, so whether Chol HaMoed is the oraisa, the rabbanan. Here, this part here seems to be a clear indication that it's the oraisa. Okay, so again, what's the purpose? So it's teaching you that even by the oraisa, it would be permitted. According to Rabbi Yossi, you can do anything, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can do at least the first part. Okay, Tanya Kabasei de Rav Sheisha Berei de Rav Idi. Okay, so now we have a brisa that follows the opinion of Rav Sheisha. Okay, again, what the Rav Sheisha said, that you have that the reason why it's saying this way, right? Rav Sheisha said, actions that are permitted on the intermediate days of a festival are prohibited during the days of one's mourning. So things, so basically you would not be allowed. These are the things that you do for the morning, the days of the morning. So this is a case in our Mishnah, olives that are flipped over, you do it for him. You may load them for him. The chado laguf, if you're able to plug the laguf, plug the casket, the barrel, ufishtano lalot min hamishra, and the flax that needs to be lifted out of the soaking pool. I guess it would, otherwise it would be ruined. That you're allowed to do also for him. But samro lalot min hayora, and also the wool that has to be lifted out of the cauldron. All these things would be big loss. So they would place the wool in the cauldron before dyeing it. And they can also irrigate his field when it comes to his time of doing it. So they would take turns. Let's say you had a lot of people, and they would take turns among the different partners in the field to water it. And so when it comes to his time, he would be somebody else would do it for him. Again, why does this support Rav Shesha? Yeah, this supports Rav Shesha's opinion that the prohibition against performing labor is waived in cases of loss only on the festival. Under such circumstances, labor is prohibited to a mourner, and in cases of loss may only be performed for him by others. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Af zorim lo sdenir. So they even can plow, they can sow for him a plowed field. And also a field set aside for flax. Because why is that allowed? Why is that different? Well, because if you don't plant these things at the right time, then you might lose the crop completely. Amrula im tizara bebachir tizara be'afel. If the field is not sown in the early season, it can be sown in the later season. Im lo tizara be'pishtan tizara min acher. So they say, okay, so saying it's not so urgent. Rabbi Yehuda again is trying to give even a bigger leniency of what can be done for a mourner, and they said to him, look, if you don't plow now, if you don't sow now, you can still sow later. It's not the end of the world. If you don't, flax is more critical to be sown at a certain time. If you can't sow flax, okay, sow something else. Use a different seed. So they would not permit this additional leniency when it comes to a mourner. Okay, so now there's even a different law for mourners, another source of permissibility for work, about somebody who's an uman, a skilled worker. So the olives are flipped over. There's no skilled worker, only him. Again, also you have to plug the casket, and he's the only skilled one that knows how to do it. Also, all these same rules basically. The flax is ready to be lifted out of the soaking pool, and also the wool to be taken out of the cauldron. And there's no other skilled worker except for him. So he's allowed to do it as a skilled worker because people otherwise it's not going to be done correctly. But he has to do it bitzina. He has to do it in a way that is private, that other people don't see him. You're saying, well, isn't this person in mourning? Why is he doing work as if as if he wasn't? Yatel can Amara ben Shimon ben Gamliel. Furthermore, Ben Shimon ben Gamliel said, Im haya uman rabin, if he was a skilled worker for many people, not only for his own work, but even for others, and he's a mourner. Besapar uvalan larabim, and he, for example, he's a sapar, he's a barber, or uvalan larabim, or he's a uvalan. Is it valan? A bath attendant for many people. The Gia et regel, right? And the festival came. Everybody wants to go to the mikvah, right? Everybody needs to become purified, and he's the one who who is in charge. But in shamuman elahu, when there's no other skilled work except for him, then he should do it. That's the Torah Harabim. These things come up quite a bit. Let's say, I don't know. There's a whole. You can think of a whole series of laws even today where there's you want a certain person that he's skilled, but the person himself is in mourning. Somebody had somebody in my family had a situation where a baby was born. They needed a bris, and the Moel had something that for a reason I'm not sure if it was morning. He had taken in Shabbos early or something like that. So what do? These are big questions. Okay, Harisan v'chakirin v'kablanos harei elu yasu acherem bishvilan. Okay, so this is still part of the brisa. So you have all these different categories of people. You have Harisin is tenant farmers, right? They what's a tenant farmer? He farms for a percentage of the crops. The Hakirin is somebody who's simply leasing the land, and Kablan is somebody who's working, just a contract worker. All these things, so other people can do work for them if they go into a state of mourning. Achamarim, Agamalim, Beasapanim. It's a donkey driver, a donkey driver, a camel driver, or a sailor. These people, the work cannot be done for them, I guess. Yeah. I guess these are things that how are you gonna be able to do it? However, let's say their animals were leased or hired out to others. Then they can do it. Basically, I think he's talking also about the animals themselves. So a person is in mourning. Later he's going to talk about this also. And the person's animal has work to do. The donkey that takes people places, like a taxi. So because the owner is in mourning, the animals themselves should not do the work either. But if they were leased out to somebody else, then it wouldn't be a problem. So there's implications today. Let's say you're a store owner, and does the store, a person goes into mourning, and the person has a partner. Does the store have to close? Right. So then can't do work. So if there's a partner, then you could sell the profits to the partner, kind of like what you do for, like, if you have a business with a goy, you sell profits of Shabbat. There are ways around it. Okay, so Sahir Yom, somebody who is like a day worker, I feel a bit ahead, even if he's in a different city, meaning people are not going to recognize him, he shouldn't do it. If he has the work of others in his hand, if a commission for others was his responsibility, even if by contract he was paid not by the day but upon its completion, right? He has a comment. He cannot do it. So what difference does it make that if it was by contract? If it was not by contract, he still wouldn't be able to do it. On the contrary, when he works by contract, it's considered as though it were his own work, since he simply receives payment for the completed task. Whether he has a contract or not, it doesn't matter. He cannot perform the work. If he is commissioned by others to perform his work, and if it was in his house, they may not perform it. But if it was in another house, they may perform it. Again, so let's say he has to do somebody else is working. He's a mourner. Somebody else is doing the work. If they're doing it in his house, he can't do it. But if it's in somebody else's house, then they can do it. So it's similar with Shabbat, right? There are things that say you have a contract worker. Right? There's going to be an issue of Maris Ayin if the person is doing work in your house, even though you're not paying them to do work on Shabbat. They can do the work whenever they want. It's a contract. You just want the work to be done. You're doing it in your house on Shabbat. What are people gonna think? So here it's similar with a mourner. Marion Breder Rabin Marde Breder Rav Acha Breder Rav Havalehu Hahu Gimla the Torah Bahade Hadadi. So these people, Marion, son of Rabin, and Mar, son of Rav Acha, son of Rabba, held a team of 2 oxen. So they were partners. They had 2 oxen, and they would work together. Itra be milta b'mar b'rei Rav Acha b'rei Rava. So Itra be milta. I guess something happened to him. But the Rav Acha b'rei Rava upaske legamle. So so Itra be milta. Yes, an event happened to him, and I guess he became a mourner. And what did he do? He removed his ox. But now they can't do the work. Now, right, we have you needed 2 ox to plow the field, and he removed one. So basically, the person who was not an Abel, he lost out. So Rav Ashi, we saw before, was saying that these are separate halachot. Anyway, so he says, Rav Ashi says, Gabra Rabba Kamar Breder Rav Acha Abid Achi, a great person like Mar Breder Rav Achi, Acha son of Rav Acha, does such a thing. Nahilif Sida the day Lachaish ad Achaim Lachaish. So so it's understandable that he's not concerned about his own loss. He's a mourner. There's nothing he can do about that. But he's not concerned about the other person. We saw before that if it was leased out to somebody else, then they could do the work. And the donkeys and all those animals could do the work, even if they were owned by a mourner. Here, isn't it the same thing? So what exactly was Rav Acha, right? So thinking, or I guess the son of Rav Acha thinking, Behu Sava Adam Chashuv Shani. So here's another rule that an important person has to be an example for everybody else in the community, so he can be strict on himself. I think what's very interesting about here also is that here's the use of Adam Chashuv, but Rav Ashi himself says Gavra Rabba, an important person like him, like a great person like him, he's going to do this. So it seems that Rav Ashi is very aware that he's an important person, and I guess it's an interesting thing in general. Like sometimes you can be machmir on one thing and being makel on something else, right? So and I think that's what Rav Ashi is saying. It's very nice that you're being machmir on yourself, but you ended up being makel on maybe behatar hakamach or something like that, where you're hurting somebody else. And so these things are very tricky. Remember hearing from I guess it's just the 6 a.m. Okay, all right. So anyway, so a person has to be aware of that sometimes a Rav has to be very aware of these different shitas, that whenever you're being machmir on something, you end up being makel on something else. Okay, so now we're moving over to Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Okay. Amar Shmuel, Mekable Kibolet Betoch Atchum Asur Chutz Latchum Mutar. So what does Shmuel say? Again, Kibolet is Kablanim, right? Contract workers. So Betoch Atchum Asur, within the Tchum, it's not allowed. Again, so a contract worker is doing work for somebody. This is talking about Shabbat, and a person is doing work within the tchum, meaning in a situation where other people would be able to see asr, then it's not allowed. Puts the tchum mutar. If it's outside of the tchum, then it would be allowed. Again, so a situation where there's no problem of maris ayin, they're being paid for contract work, so it should be allowed. Amar Papa v'afilu chutz l'tchum lo amaran ela deleka mata de mikarba lahasam about ika mata de mikarba lahasam asr. Papa says, even if it's outside of the tchum, we're only saying that if there's no other city or people living in that place. And I guess you're assuming that if you're most of the time you're going to build your house in a place where there are other people, right? So that is going to limit it a lot. But I think it's not just other people; it's other Jews. So even though they don't not even know who you are, they're seeing work being done on Shabbat. I guess at some point you're going to move in. It's going to be a problem. About ika mata mikarba lahasam asr, right? So then, if there is a town around that, even though it's inside your tchum, it's inside somebody else's tchum, there are Jews living there, they're going to see this, so it would still be asr. So that limits it even further. Amar Rav Misharsha, he says, "V'chi leika mata demikarva lahasam nami." But even when there is no other city in particular, now we're even going to limit it even further. Lo amaran eila b'shabbatot b'yamim tovim. Okay, so on Shabbat and on Yom Tov, where people are going to stay within the tchum, so you don't have to worry. But what about Chol HaMoed? Well, b'cholo shel Moed, dishchichi inchi de'azei be'atlat ha'masor. So even on Chol HaMoed also, you wouldn't be able to do it. So because why? Because on Chol HaMoed people travel, so they're going to go and see that there's people working in that house. That would be a problem. Marzutra bered Rav Nachman banu le apadna mikable kibolet chusatchom. Okay, now we have an actual scenario like that. So, Rav Marzutra, son of Rav Nachman, he was making a house. Apadna is like a mansion, big house, and he's doing it outside of the tchum, and it's contract worker. So again, so as long as there's nobody else there living around there, and it's not on Chol HaMoed, it's on Shabbat Yom Tov, then it would be allowed, I guess. Ikla Rav Safra, Rav Huna Bar Chinana, the two other rabbis, they came, they happened to come there, and they would not go in the house. Wow. He himself didn't go into his own house that he built. Okay, so but what exactly is the problem here? Right? If it just wasn't inside the tchum, I would understand that it would be asr, but it's outside. So what's the problem? It's mutter. Adam chashushani. Here again we have this rule: somebody who's an important person, it's going to be different. No, there's another problem. He was helping out the workers. How does he help? How did he help out? He was providing them with their bricks. I guess he wasn't himself doing that on Shabbat, but somebody else was helping them out on Shabbat. Okay, so I guess these are two different halachas that are we have to think about. If it's a great person, he has to be extra strict on himself, and if he's somehow contributing, providing financial assistance, helping the work move along faster, then that's also going to limit it.
This is a long and important part of the Shulchan Aruch. It shouldn't appear that you're having work done and you're having Shabbat. This is now applying it to Chol HaMoed.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So and Cholam. Yeah. And it's interesting also here, like where you have to go totally out of your way into a situation where he himself ended up not using his own house. Yeah.
That's a very subjective test, depending on the circumstance.
Yeah.
Where it isn't, people are going to see.
Yeah.
And misconstrue it.
I heard a story also, again, I think it was one of the shurim from Rabbi Rosner. He was saying that the story about the Rabbi Shmelke of Nikolsburg. He was one of the Talmidim of the Nomili Melech. So after he left the house for davening on Friday night, the candlelights went out, and somebody in the house, the workers, non-Jewish workers, like relit the lights. So he came back home, and he's like, it's completely dark. Did people forgot to light the Shabbos candles? It's completely like everybody else could see that they had relit the lights, but he himself couldn't even see it. It wasn't even part of his reality that the lights had been lit, because they were lit in an appropriate way. So here's like some kind of idea here where he's not even tzaddikim don't want to benefit at all. He's not even recognizing that the house was built, I guess. And here's only like a homer, I think. Rav Chama Shra Lehul Abu Nagre Deveiresh Galusa. Okay, so Rav Chama, he allowed the bath workers of the Reish Galusa, the Exilarch, to do their work on Chol HaMoed. Amar, given the Agar La Kashakli, since they're not taking any payment for this, Shirashui Hu de Kamishar Shule Relate Lanba. They're not taking payment for it during the week of the festival, and they're just doing a favor, then it's not a problem. That's interesting also. I guess for the racial, also there's a concern also, right, of how he would react. Yeah. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. Mekabin kibolet b'moed la'asota lachar moed. Okay, so the question is, are you allowed to agree to a contract for work that's going to be done after Chol HaMoed on Chol HaMoed? Okay, so if it's a contract work, you are allowed. But if the work is going to be done on Chol HaMoed itself, then it would be asur. Whatever a person can do, the goy can do. Whatever he himself cannot do, the goy himself also would not do. So that's what you were talking about. Amir al-Akum, what can you tell a goy to do? Not much, right? So these are the things that people don't fully grasp. I think that you're right, that you can't tell a goy to do anything. I think it's when you have a public need, then there are more exceptions. But the simple thing is that you can't tell a goy to do, turn on this light for me on Shabbat. You can't do it yourself, so others can't do it either. Tanya also it's taught in a brayso. Mekablin kibod b'moed la'asota lachar moed. So you can receive a contract to do on moed, to do it after the moed. So there's an idea here also. There has to be a change. You're not going to measure, weigh, or count, right? All these ways of planning to do the work the same way that you would do during the weekday. Because I think perhaps that's also because that's almost like already part of the work itself, like you're preparing, right? Yeah. Okay.
The issue here with retaining a couple on to do the work is always he has the choice as to when he's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't give a goy something that he must do on Shabbos.
Right.
But if he has a choice to do it Friday afternoon or Sunday morning, promotes each of us, that's his business.
Right. Another thing that seems or practically comes up a lot is, are you allowed to mail something on a Friday afternoon? Can you go to the post office on a Friday and put a letter in the mail? I think it's the same kind of thing. If you put it where you want, overnight, then it becomes a problem. But just to leave it at the post office, at least the Shulchan Aruch, the halacha, as far as I know, is that it's allowed. Because again, you're not really telling them when to deliver it.
Or something like dry cleaning also.
Uh-huh.
Give it in. He does it himself, it's his business.
Right. Yeah. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan. This is now a different part of a different kind of malacha, but still considered malacha. Marbian behema becholo shel moed. You cannot compel, breed an animal on chol moed. Chayotze bo ein marbian bechor. Also not allowed to breed a bechor. Right? There's special halachas related to what you're not allowed to do work with a bechor. This belongs to the temple. And also, even a consecrated animal that's unfit, it still retains holiness, and you're not allowed to compel it to breed. Okay, so I'll start on the brisa. You cannot breed an animal on Moed. Rabbi Yehuda, it says, he's also giving a little bit more leniency.
A lot of good stuff.
I know.
So then, what's an exception? Rabbi Yehuda also always comes up with giving a few leniencies. Chamora, so a female donkey that's in heat. There's a limited time frame when this female donkey can breed, and tzitzanin like means to go cold. If it loses its heat period, then it's going to go without mating for that season. The other animals, you can bring them to the corral. You're not really forcing anything. But if it happens on its own, then it wouldn't be a problem. Tanu Rabbanan, ein medairin lo b'shabbatot v'lo b'yamim tovim. Okay, so but there's another complication that could happen, is that if it's enclosed in a field, that could be considered like you're fertilizing it. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbat, v'lo b'yamim tovim. You cannot do that on Yom Tov also, v'lo b'chol Moed. Even on Chol Moed, you're not allowed to enclose livestock in a certain area in order to fertilize that field. But if they come on their own and they end up, fertilizing on their own, then it's allowed. This is kind of similar to what we were talking about before, where with Mar Zutra, the problem was, at least according to one opinion, was that he was aiding the construction of the house. Here, there would be an issue also if you provided to Gentiles a shepherd to help them herd the sheep in order to fertilize the land. Okay, but now, if it was a longer period in place that these people were being contracted for, Shabbat here doesn't mean Shabbat, it means a week. If a Gentile was contracted for a whole week, again, not specific about when he needs to do the work, or for a month, or for a year, or for a Shavua here means a 7-year period, then you're allowed to provide for a shepherd. It's not a problem. You're not providing it specifically for Shabbat, Yom Tov, or Chol Moed. You're just providing them with a shepherd in general. Rabbi Omer b'Shabbat b'Tova b'Yom Tov b'Zonot b'Moed b'Schar. So you're providing other things also. On Shabbat, you can do a favor for a Gentile worker, I guess. On Yom Tov, you could provide for food for them, and on Chol Hamoed you can even provide for their salary. Amar Yosef Kirabi, and that's that again. This last thing was from Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and that is the halacha. All right. Okay, so we keep going.
It's up to you.
Okay.
This is where to stop.
Yeah. Let's try to make it to the next Amud because we have a little bit of time. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I can handle. I'll try. All right. Mishnah. Okay, so now before we're talking about olive oil, now we're going to talk about wine. Mishnah. וכן מי שהיה יינו בתוך הבור ועירו אבל או אונס או שיתו זולף וגומר בגף כדרכו. דברי רבי יוסי. רבי יהודה אומר עושה לו לימודים בשביל שלא יחמיץ. Okay, so what's the issue here? Very similar scenario. You have the grapes. The grapes would go in a pit, and once they were in the pit, it was all or nothing. Now you had to finish the job, and you have the same kind of situation where either he became a mourner, or there was some other kind of accident that took place, or that the workers fooled him. They said they were going to show up, and they ended up not showing up. So then he keeps going. He finishes. But he draws out the rest of the wine, and he seals it right with, and that's what Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, again, in the other Mishnah about olive oil, he was the one that said you could do everything. And Rabbi Yehuda was a little bit more strict here. Also, Rabbi Yehuda he says, no, you can do. There's an in between here. You can just make a wooden panel so that the wine's not gonna sour. I guess it, almost like similar to having it in a barrel, I guess. So the Gemara is going to start with Shricha. First of all, the Gemara is going to ask, why do we even need this Mishnah? So we already had another one about olive oil. Yeah, the Iash Minan Kamaisa, if we went like before, right? You would think that so olive oil was actually more expensive than wine. I don't know if that's true today, but I guess so. So because it was more expensive, then you think that maybe Rabbi Yossi is being more lenient with olive oil, but not necessarily would it be as lenient with wine. About Chamra de lo nafish seda, right? So it wouldn't be such a big loss. Ema modi later Rabbi Yehuda, then you would go this in between step. Biashminan batraita. If you only teach this Mishnah now, the one that we do about wine, behahika amar Rabbi Yehuda aval beach ema model Rabbi Yossi. You'd think that he would agree here. Here he would have an opinion that you have to do in between, and before he would agree to Rabbi Yossi that you could do everything. That's why you need both. So in both cases, you have this scenario where because olive oil is more expensive, you would think that maybe Rabbi Yossi would be more lenient there, but here and also with Rabbi Yehuda would be more lenient there. But we see that it's the same with grapes and olive oil. Okay. Yeah, maybe let's stop here. I think it's maybe a good place.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
The show must go on.